Over the past few weeks, we've seen these controversies in Indiana and Arkansas involving laws that would allow religious discrimination against LGBT people. There's so much misinformation about what the bills do, why they need to be passed, that I just wanted to take this time to cover kind of the background information about these cases. Let's make sure that when we argue against these laws, we're fully educated about them. This is going to be super simplified, I know. I'm skipping over a lot of details just to kind of give you this overview, but I hope you look up the details for yourself. So let me go back to 1990. There was a law in Oregon that banned possession of or use of peyote, which was a hallucinogenic drug. It applied to everyone, but a couple of Native Americans, who happened to be drug counselors, were fired for using peyote. Not only were they fired, they got no unemployment benefits, so they sued. Their argument was that using peyote was just a part of their religion, so really they were fired for exercising their religious freedom. The question the courts had to decide was, if there's a law that's supposed to apply to everyone, could there be religious exemptions to it? The Supreme Court said no. The law is the law, no exemptions. And that applied in this case to the Native Americans because they were fired for reasons that had nothing to do with their religion. But that spooked a lot of religious people who thought this law may come back to haunt them. So a few years later, Congress decided to pass a law carving out these exemptions. Because if your religion says you have to do something, the government shouldn't be able to tell you otherwise. That was the religious freedom argument. They passed a law with bipartisan support called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Let's call it RFRA. President Bill Clinton signed it into law in 1993. RFRA said legitimate religious exceptions to the law were okay unless the government had a really good argument for saying otherwise, like a public safety issue, and as long as they were doing it in the least restrictive way possible. For example, if you're a Muslim prisoner who wants to grow a beard because your religion says you have to, but the government says you can't grow a beard in prison because you might hide something in it, the Supreme Court ruled earlier this year, using a law very similar to RFRA, that the government can't force you not to grow a beard. That's not a good enough reason. Let the man have a short beard. It's okay. But if you're a Quaker and your religion says you have to oppose war and you know your taxes go to support our military, you can't just say, I'm not going to pay my taxes this year. In that case, the government has a pretty good reason to force you to pay your taxes, and your religious exception doesn't really apply there. And then, following some additional legal battles, various states started passing their own version of RFRA to apply to their laws. When Barack Obama was a state senator, he helped pass Illinois' version of the same law. Now, before I move on, I should say that there are some groups out there that oppose RFRA altogether. Because basically what RFRA does is say that if you have a really compelling religious argument to break the law, you might be able to get away with it. But if you just have a really strong feeling about something, that's not good enough. That gives religion a special place in our government. And for that reason, a lot of church-state separation groups don't like RFRA at all. Now let's jump to last year. Remember the Hobby Lobby case that was in front of the Supreme Court? The owners of Hobby Lobby said they didn't want to provide abortion pills to people who worked for them, which they weren't actually doing, but it didn't matter because they had a really strong belief about it. And the Supreme Court said, fine, we will exempt you from that law. You don't have to provide comprehensive health insurance for your employees because of your religious beliefs, because of the owner's religious beliefs. Now, I disagree with that ruling, but look what it did. The Supreme Court said that RFRA didn't just apply to individuals, like the guys using peyote. It applied to companies. Companies had religious rights. Which brings us to Indiana. Suppose you're a Christian florist. You're supposed to serve everybody who comes through your doors. That's what the anti-discrimination laws say. Now, a gay couple walks in and wants you to arrange flowers for their wedding. Should you be allowed to say no? The conservative argument has been sure. According to RFRA, if your religious beliefs forbid, gay marriage, then you should be allowed to say no, you don't want to participate in a gay wedding. The government doesn't have a good enough reason to force you to do it, especially when there are other florists in the area. The liberal response has been, come on, you're not being asked to participate in a wedding. You have a business. Just because you have gay customers, it doesn't matter. Just arrange the damn flowers. Making things worse in Indiana was the fact that LGBT people weren't already protected under the anti-discrimination laws. They're not a protected class like they are in some other states, so in theory, Christian florists didn't even have to treat them equally. The state passed some provisions to fix this, due to a lot of the backlash, but the truth is, anti-LGBT discrimination is still a very real problem in Indiana. So what's going to happen now? You have anti-discrimination laws protecting LGBT people in some places, but you also have RFRA providing religious freedom protection in other places. That's a question the courts are going to have to decide. Does the government have good enough reason to say that equal treatment of LGBT people trumps someone else's religious freedom? The religious right says no. If someone doesn't want to serve gay people, just ask the customers to go to the next town over. But I think the government has a pretty compelling reason to want everyone to be treated equally under the law. Some people are already trying to test just how far this law will go. In Indiana, a guy started up the first church of cannabis. His argument went like this: Indiana has a law that says I can't smoke marijuana, but my religion demands that I do. So if RFRA means my religious beliefs trump whatever the law says, time to toke up. Personally, I think RFRA goes too far at both the state and national level. There's no reason that just because you have a strong religious belief about something, that should matter more than someone else who just has a strong conviction about it. The law is the law. But since repealing RFRA at this point seems a little too far-fetched, the most we could do is make sure there are anti-discrimination measures in place in states like Indiana, where it would be really easy for people to discriminate against gay people if they wanted to because of their faith. My name is Hemant Mehta, and I write at friendlyatheist.com. What do you want to see a video about? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to check it out.